Hello everyone and welcome to Avantika Designeering Series or ADS as we like to call it. Every week on Wednesday, we feature design and technology leaders who share their professional journey, their thoughts on their domain of work, and designeering where the world of design and engineering meet. Make sure you follow us on social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. And with that, let's continue with your show.
The world thrives to live upon emotions. We give in when we are moved by something, hitching an emotional connection. And in fact, this is the power of storytelling, which brands practice immensely. The ability to tell a story and make an identity. The process of becoming a part of someone's life and building a relationship that lasts a lifetime. Leaders at organization have been practicing this exceptionally to build a bond with their customers or stakeholders so as to make brands and product to speak for themselves. Today, we have with us someone who has nurtured brands, given them a memorable personality to be remembered and be embraced by its customers. You look around and there's a story being told to you. And so many of these stories have been created by Lulu Raghavan. She works as managing director at Landor Associates. She is one of India's 50 most influential women in media, marketing, and advertising. She's a voracious reader, writes regularly on Power of Brand, and is also a sleep evangelist. Her journey has been exhilarating, and there's so much to learn from it. On our journey for discovering designeering, today we talk with her about the business of communication. Thank you, Lulu, for joining us on Avantika Designeering series. We're really excited about hosting you on our show today.
Thank you so much, Rohit. It's a real pleasure to be on the show today.
So, Lulu, starting with my first question, given the background of COVID, in fact, on a global scale, we are going through a situation that we haven't imagined. But while we talk about brands, how should they be tackling this situation? Is it important for brands to come out and speak about this?
Absolutely. What we're going through is unprecedented change. Consumers the world over have been really shaken up in terms of what's going on, what's happening to their lives, what the future holds. And brands have always been about being anchored in a cultural context. And when the whole context is changing so dramatically, brands have to respond. Now, do they respond with a redesign of their products and services? Do they respond with some sort of communication? Do they respond with outreach to their customers? It really depends on which industry the company or product or service is in. But there has to be some sort of response. I've been on many webinars, and there are some people who are opposed to brands responding right now because they feel that it should be business as usual. But I'm a huge believer in cultural context. And when change has happened so dramatically, brands have a responsibility to respond.
Yeah, I see all of us need to play a part in uplifting the spirit of the society as of right now. So, moving from brands to your story, in fact, it's beautifully said that the journey is as important as the destination. You started your education in economics, went on to do management, and then the industry of branding. How has your professional journey been? Can you take us through your professional journey?
Sure, I will, Rohit. In fact, I feel incredibly lucky that I chanced upon brand consulting because I'm so passionate about it now. And it's become more than just a job, it's become a huge passion. As you know, I like to think of myself as an evangelist for branding and design. But you're absolutely right. How did somebody in economics and someone who did an MBA get into it in the first place? Actually, the story starts when I came back to India after my undergrad. I studied in the US at Davidson College, and I did my major in economics with an applied math concentration. So I was really on this path of either management consulting or investment banking. But when I came back to India, this was around 1997, I was thinking about jobs, and then I realized that in India, to get into a consulting or a banking firm, you really needed an MBA. So I was stuck, just had an undergrad degree, it wasn't very valued here, and I was wondering what to do. At that time, my mother actually introduced me to one of her friends who was in advertising, a gentleman by the name of Shumit Roy, and I had a long conversation with him. And he asked me this very pertinent question. He said to me, Lulu, do you want to be a small fish in a big pond, or do you want to be a big fish in a small pond? It really took me a while to understand that, but he introduced me to the world of advertising and marketing, and more specifically to the world of brand consulting. He told me about his friend Sridhar, who was working at Ogilvy Consulting, and he explained that Ogilvy Consulting was actually a new model of an advertising agency that was really trying to get into this field, this new burgeoning field of brand consulting. And he explained to me how it would be a very good combination of left brain thinking, which of course I had done undergrad, and also right brain thinking, things like languages, creativity, imagination, which he also felt that I had from chatting with me. So Shumit actually introduced me to brand consulting. In fact, I'm very much in touch with him. That led me to my first job at Ogilvy with R. Sridhar, who had started this. I worked under him for a year, and then there's been no looking back.
And then from Ogilvy to Landor, how did that transition happen?
So I had a fabulous year, Rohit, in Ogilvy. That was the year when Sonal Debral, Piyush Pandey were all doing brilliantly. And I had exposure to some of the best minds in the industry. And they all felt that being in strategy and client servicing in the Ogilvy context, it would help me if I got an MBA. And Sridhar also really pushed me and to think about an MBA while I was young and had just started out in the world of work. So I actually did my CAT exams, got into SP Jain Institute of Management and Research in Andheri in Mumbai, and I focused on international business and marketing. And there I had a professor by the name of Harsh Mohan and Professor Murthy in marketing, who were both very, very passionate about brands. And they really built upon this whole excitement around brands that had been seeded in me in Ogilvy. And I specialized in branding within international business and marketing. My thesis was in branding. In fact, in 2000, which was when I was graduating, my international business and marketing thesis was on how Indian IT companies, their brands needed to really transcend the whole, offshoring imagery to add more value to businesses. And so I wrote that whole paper on how branding can help Indian IT businesses. So it was really there that my passion for brands was firmly established. Then I actually got married and moved to the US in San Francisco. And when I was in the Bay Area looking for jobs, a friend of my husband's knew somebody at this company called Landor. I hadn't actually heard about it, researched it, interviewed there, and I got an offer actually in this field of naming, which was one part of branding. So it was really fascinating. And the reason I got that job is because I had familiarity with many languages in addition to English, Hindi, and Tamil, and Sanskrit, which I knew from India. I'd also learned French when I was in Davidson in the US and had picked up Spanish as well. And when you are a naming strategist, familiarity with languages, and of course, ability to come up with lots of name solutions and then sell that in to clients are all skills that are valued. And so that's where my journey with Landor began back in 2000 in San Francisco as a naming strategist.
Well, that's really exciting. In fact, there are a lot of pointers that are picked up for my questions that would follow. However, the first thing that really inspired me, Lulu, here is the gratitude that you have for your mentors, for your professors. You remember their names clearly. You are talking about them, and that's really wonderful.
Thank you. I'm hugely grateful because I feel that at different stages in my education, undergrad, my Ogilvy time at SP Gen, it's these mentors who've always led the way. So I've been lucky, and in fact, even at Landor, it started in 2000, and now it's almost 2020. I've been at Landor for 20 years. I've had so many mentors. So yes, Rohit, I'm a huge believer because when somebody who really understands you, your talent, and what you bring to the table, they can make a remark or they can suggest something which may slightly change the trajectory that you've been on. And sometimes it can change it dramatically, all for the better. So I think one should be really grateful when you find these older people who have experience, who take a personal interest in you and can really help direct you. Absolutely.
One of the other interesting observation, Lulu, has been that you've spent 20 years with Landor. Usually, when you talk to a lot of, early millennials and millennials, they usually are in the spree of jumping organizations and, climbing up the ladder in the corporate world. But you've been there for such a long time. How's that been?
I think a number of factors, Rohit. Firstly, I've actually had quite an incredible rise within Landor itself. If you think about me starting as a naming strategist in San Francisco in 2000 to being the MD of Landor Mumbai's operations today, every few years I've had incredible growth. The company has exposed me to some other part of the business and I've really grown. So starting in naming, then moving to brand strategy, moving into corporate strategy, then moving into new business and client development. And then 12 years ago, when my husband and I were returning to India, rather than letting go of me, Landor gave me the opportunity to start up Landor in India. So it's been an entrepreneurial journey in the last 12 years. Every day has been super exciting, full of challenges and obstacles as well. So, in short, I've never had to look outside because I've had plenty of opportunities to grow and to look ahead. Plus, we have a fantastic culture. The way in which we do our work, it's just so much fun. There's not so much hierarchy. It's a creative culture. It's thrilling and engaging. Plus, it's consulting as well. So it's a broad mix of problems that we solve every day, exposure to various industries. Because of Landor's own reputation, we get to work on the most challenging, biggest, most prestigious branding projects. I have a wonderful team of designers, creatives, strategists that I work with. So I really cannot find a single reason why I would be unhappy and want to leave. So I've never, ever, ever looked. And actually, it's going to be 20 years in January 2021.
Interesting. In fact, what intrigues me about your journey is one more element. You don't come from a D school or a design school. However, you're still the most sought after speaker at all design forums. So, where did from, the world of communication getting into design, how did that transition happen?
It's funny that you asked that question, Rohit, because sometimes I feel like the biggest imposter, especially when I was a design judge at Gyan a couple of years ago. The Can Lions design jury. I was one of the judges from India. We had about 15 judges, and I was literally the only one who wasn't a technical specialist in design. I suppose it's all about learning by doing. I've been in this business for 20 years. It's the best design company in the world, having worked in San Francisco, New York, London, and in India. Every day being exposed to problem solving, variety of solutions, lots and lots of interactions and conversations with the best designers. You just pick it up over the years. A lot of self study, a lot of observation, a lot of reading, reflection, and then just practice, having done it on so many projects. So, yes, while my formal education has been more on the business side, My work experience has been entirely in the application of branding and design every single day. So I think I've logged the hours, and my experience is what makes it valuable.
Absolutely. I think that's such a beautiful way of putting or connecting all the dots together. So moving from your story to understanding certain elements in the world of communication design. In fact, if you look in India, communication and design has matured over last few years, and you've been in the thick of it for years. So how has it been to be a part of this revolution?
I would say it's broader than just communication design. In the last 12 years, I've really seen how the importance of brand and design have grown. 12 years ago, when we used to get RFPs, clients would throw in ad agencies, PR agencies, branding agencies. But now there is a recognition for the contributions of branding and design specialists. I think that has been one remarkable change. There are lots of successful case histories in India of brand transformations that have really impacted and positively grown the business. That also increases the belief in design in corporate India. And design has also become much more pervasive. So, design really as a mindset, design thinking as a mindset. So, it's much broader than just communication design. It is service design, it's experience design, it's UI UX design, it's product design. Overall, it's a recognition that today brands are built based on the experience that you create for consumers, and the experience at every touch point matters. So how can design in a holistic sense be leveraged in order to create a really amazing wow experience at every touch point? So I would say the awareness of what design can do, the use of it, and then the belief in it as a real driver of business has been the big change that's happened over these years.
In fact, one of the points that you mentioned right now is the awareness part of it. One thing that keeps intriguing me is that we see so many global top brand lists out there, so many companies that keep coming up with them, but we see very few Indian brands that get featured there. Now, I'm sure that the methodologies keep changing, but do you think that Indian brands aren't doing enough in terms of nurturing and building their intellectual property?
I don't think that's the reason at all, Rohit. Whether it's brand Z's top 100 brands or Interbrand's top 100 brands, a lot of it is based on the footprint that the brand has globally. How many Indian brands are there in more than 5 or 10 countries of the world? If you look at the top brands, whether it's an Apple, a BMW, Coca Cola, any of those top brands, Google, Dell, they're ubiquitous. There are not that many Indian brands who've had that penetration across the world. So until Indian businesses invest in international expansion hugely, not just Europe or not just the Africas or neighboring countries or just the US, but really across the world, we won't see an Indian brand on that list.
Yeah, I think that's quite well put down. In fact, moving from the global brand perspective, one of the things that you've been very advocate of is building a personal brand. Can you share certain inputs or tips in terms of how can someone build a personal brand?
Yeah, absolutely. In all these years of doing branding, I've been starting to think about why aren't we using the tools that we have in branding much more strategically to really make ourselves more relevant, more differentiated, more engaging, and just attractive? Why do we need to do it? Because we all dream of greatness. We're all looking for the next opportunity. Sometimes it may be a job, but sometimes it could be either a speaking opportunity, a writing opportunity, it could be to host an event. Just opportunities in this world are tremendous. And unless you stand out for standing for something or for being known for something, then you're not going to get these opportunities. What personal branding allows you to do is to really distill what you are, what you stand for, and what's so special about you in a very, very clear and simple way. And then use all of the tools of branding and design to actually signal that specialness about you and that expertise in the touch points of your personal brand. So it could be a website, it could be a social media, it could be your business card, it could be even just in the interactions that people have with you. I believe that personal branding is relevant irrespective of whether you're working at a company, you're a young designer starting out, looking for a job, or an entrepreneur. People should clearly know, who are you, Rohit Lalvani? What's special about him? What can I count on him for? And what do I associate with brand Rohit? So I think that branding offers us an incredible opportunity to use those for our own selves to get access to incredible new opportunities which we'd never had before.
In fact, it's an exciting process. And now that I think about it, I'm actually able to understand how the process shapes up the brand. So, moving from personal branding, one of the other questions that I usually ask experts like you is, how do you think the field of communication design specifically has matured beyond visuals and graphics into what it is today?
I think a huge element is copy or verbal. You have to look at a touch point holistically, right? So whether it's a website, social media, a print ad, or a campaign, it's really the pairing of visual and verbal that is really, really important. Of course, there's animation, there's movement and motion. That's come into the picture much more as well. And then there are all the digital mediums. Before, you were just thinking of print mediums. Now there's digital mediums, and then there's also spatial mediums. So I think it's evolved quite rapidly, and it's about thinking about all of the senses, thinking about, what can this communication, what can this piece do to actually hook my consumer, to attract them, and to really make them want my product or service. So it's these different vectors that have been added. And so it's really the visuals working well with the verbal, working well with the motion, the voice of the brand, if you will, in the aura of the environment, whether it's online or offline. So it's really quite holistic. I don't think you can look at it in a very siloed way.
One of the other elements here is, with communication design being adopted by so many industries and organizations across the domain of design, mass communication, marketing, education, and more. What are the critical things that you suggest that young aspirants, young communication designers, young mass communication students, if they want to stand tall in this crowd, in this clutter, how can one do that?
I think the ability to really simplify a lot of complex information will be key. There's so much information, there's a clutter that's coming through us. And if you look at even the well designed news websites or even WhatsApp forwards that you get, the ability to take these complex ideas and either through one or two visuals or a few words really communicate the essence of that will be really important. So simplification, which means you really have to understand a lot and try to boil it down to the essence. That's something that is going to be very, very important. The second is empathy. Increasingly, your communication will be only as good as your deep empathy with the end user, the customer, the stakeholder. And so the ability to really immerse yourself and understand, how the user is thinking, feeling, behaving is really important before designing. Empathy is going to be increasingly important, especially in a digital first world, It's easy to just get a brief and then start designing, but the ability to step back and truly understand the consumer's world before designing will be really, really important. And then I think just really thinking about the magic or the X factor in the communication that's going to help it stand out, because standing out in the clutter is going to be extremely important going forward, especially in an attention deficit prevalent society where people don't look at anything for more than 3 seconds. You know how they think that we have the attention span, which is even less than that of a goldfish, which has only 8 seconds of an attention span. So the ability for that communication to stand out will depend on originality, something magical, something very, very different. So your ability to empathize, to synthesize complex to simple, and then coming up with a very original combination or way of representing that is what will help you break through and create something truly extraordinary.
In fact, you mentioned digital first, and obviously, we can't ignore technology. So, is branding communication design for digital medium very different than the one in the conventional physical world?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because it is a lot of these elements, it's voice, it's visuals, it's movement, it's the screen, the real estate that you have is very, very different as well. It's also about catching attention. Digital banner is very different from, a print ad. So absolutely, the medium is different. The storytelling, the language of the medium. You think about Instagram stories. It's amazing. My kids are so fluent in it. I look at it and every day I'm trying to be more creative in it, but I just don't have it, have that fluency in the same way that they do. So it is a different medium, and mastering that medium will be key, because the way you tell stories, the way you visualize, the way you really catch somebody's attention will be very different in the digital medium for all of the reasons mentioned above.
And can you share with us some exciting ways of implementing technology to accentuate brands that you've seen in recent times?
Um, I think if you look at any of these brands, look at Spotify, Netflix, Snapchat, Uber, if you just study all of them, they're all in constant beta. They're trying so many things all of the time. Landor has done a lot of work in this area. We've even taken traditional brands like Old Spice, for example, really into the digital space. So it's a question of mastering the medium, which only comes from practice, Rohit. So it is something that you prototype and you're constantly at it. I don't have any specific principles here, but it's really about tell your story in the shortest time that you can in the most original and striking way to create standout.
Absolutely. The other exciting thing that's happening these days is the immersion of these micro brands across social media. I mean, when we keep scrolling through our social media pages, there are millions of these. Do you think these can have a cumulative effect on the way consumers react to brands? And do you see the buying style shifting to these micro brands, someday?
Yeah, absolutely could be. I think it would really depend on whether that micro brand has created enough of an engaging community. If you think about Glossier, which is a personal beauty brand in the US, it started out as a micro brand on Instagram and through a blog, actually. It started through a blog where the founder was taking pictures of the beauty products used by celebrities, posting those pictures, and really creating a community of very interested consumers, those who are really interested in personal beauty brands. And over time, she's now built that into a $200 million business. Um, it's incredible that Glossier started as a blog, became a community, then became a retail store, and now is this, incredible force to reckon with, and all the FMCG companies like Unilever and P&G are really paying attention to Glossier. So absolutely, any of these micro brands have a chance to potentially be a huge billion-dollar brand, if you will. But I think it comes down to product market fit, the community that they create, the storytelling that they do, and if they're able to create a habit. See, if you go back to the Glossier story, they got their consumers hooked. Consumers wanted to keep coming back to see, which was the next celebrity's bathroom shelf can I look at, and that behavioral hook, was what built the business. And then, of course, the Emily Weiss, the founder, she did brilliant things with actually starting products, using the community to really power the brand. So, yes, absolutely possible. There are lots, so the odds of making it are low. That's become, while the cost of building a brand has crashed, the difficulty of standout has increased. As you said, there are so many, and which one will attract me, which will continue to attract me, and which one will manage enough of a scale of consumers to be able to become a brand to reckon with. These are all hurdles, but I think focus and creating something that really hooks your consumers is the way to go.
Yeah, I'm sure all of this will definitely change even the behavior on these mainstream global brands. They'll also be on their toes, and I'm sure there's opportunity for even newer and better captivity and immersion out there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fascinating trend. Good on you for calling it out, because I think big brands should be focusing on these micro brands. In the US, it used to be called D2C brands, using the digital mediums to go direct, but I think micro brands is a nicer word.
Yeah, in fact, it's also given birth to this new industry. And what's exciting, Lulu, is when the East stands out in this area. In fact, the Westerners are learning from us the entire concept of social commerce, and it's growing very aggressively.
Yeah, absolutely. You mean like Tencent and WeChat and WhatsApp business?
Yeah, Instagram businesses. So I see a lot of women, lot of homemakers, a lot of students who use these platforms to actually do business.
Yes, absolutely. So that ability to have that interactivity with the consumers, real-time information, to own all of the data and constantly evolve your product and service. I think the medium of Instagram is incredible. As super visual medium as well. Really, really lends itself to many of these new products and service launches.
Yeah. So, with technology, one of the other elements, Lulu, that I've seen that's coming into business is templatization of everything. And do you think it's a safe ideology in the world of marketing or branding of templatization? Will it be considered as a standard aspect, or is it something that requires disruption?
Absolutely requires disruption. Templatization is the kiss of death. We all know that templatization and same leads to commoditization, which means why should I pick your brand over the other? Why me? What's special and different will be more critical than ever before when you have a deluge of brands. So differentiation is absolutely critical to stand out. You may start with a template, but then you have to really add the layers to differentiate and stand out. So if you don't do that, I think you're doomed.
So, Lulu, one of those last questions, and at Avantika, we coined this term called as designeering, where we think the world of design and engineering actually merge, they come together, and there's a lot of interesting innovation around it. Do you think it's relevant, and does it interplay anywhere in your industry or workplace?
Hugely relevant. I love the term designeering, right? It's really about problem solving. There are thousands of problems to be solved. The disciplines of design and engineering bring us so much, including empathy, framing of problems, prototyping, a mindset to create, iterate, and then actually at the end of the day, we're engineering behavior, we're engineering new products and services. So yes, huge engineering experiences, hugely relevant. And I think if your young designers are really thinking about that as a verb, designeering, I think absolutely fantastic, because the practice of designeering can create the breakthrough products and services and experiences of tomorrow. So absolutely love the phrase.
Absolutely. In fact, I also see it as a window of opportunity for a lot of people who can seize and work on its principle.
Yeah.
So, Lulu, moving from there to our last segment, we call it Gyan Vyan, which is a quickie takeaway segment for our listener. I'm going to toss a few questions to you, and we would like to hear your top of the mind responses to the same. So, are you ready for this?
Sure, bring it on, Rohit.
Great. So, Lulu, can you name one woman in the industry that has always inspired you and why?
Indra Nui, I've always looked at her as an Indian woman who conquered the world stage, becoming CEO of a global company as prestigious as Pepsi, doing it while also raising two children and taking Pepsi to another level, truly transforming the company, bringing design and design thinking into Pepsi, becoming a mentor for so many, and then, of course, now taking on many interesting advisory and leadership roles. She's somebody who caught my eye a long time ago when I was in business school. I've followed her journey ever since, and I'm always inspired by her achievements, her philosophy, and her outlook on work and life.
Okay, that's inspiring. Our next one is taken from one of your blogs. So, in real life, which flavor or brand of candy do you think you are?
Oh, that's a really good one. I think it'll have to be a lemony lime mixture. So a little bit of sweet and a little bit of tart and bursting with freshness.
So, this was from the story about you and your father every Sunday going out to candy store. So that's where we picked this up from.
Nice. A lot of research, Rohit.
So, a brand that you always swear by is?
That's a really good one. I would say Nivea. I have used this brand for over 30 years. It's somehow one of those classics. I use it every day and it's timeless, it's elegant, it's so trusted, and it's served me well. It's not the most exciting one, but it's been a brand that's been a part of my life for so very long.
Okay. And if you were a part of a Shakespearean drama in your firm, who would you be? Would you be Hamlet, Juliet, Portia, or Shakespeare himself?
Oh my God. I'd like to think Shakespeare. I'll tell you why, and not that I have any great literary talent.
But you are a voracious reader.
I do read. I'm not a huge Shakespeare fan in that sense. I think Shakespeare is always associated for me with school and difficulty in understanding all of that language. I'm actually reading some Shakespeare right now and I enjoy it. But I'll tell you why I would say Shakespeare. What's so interesting about him is there are so many phrases that we use in our day-to-day lives, which are over 400 years, and they came from Shakespeare. We don't even realize it, but so many phrases that have become part of our everyday language. And the reason I say that, because at work I noticed that many of the things that I say, whether it's chop chop, or let's divide and conquer, or how do we excite our clients, how do we make this the most interesting part of our client's day, those little phrases that I use um, in our daily work with our teams just becomes a part of the lingo of the office. And I've been doing this for 12 years in the Indian context, and sometimes I even forget some of the things that I coined 10 years ago, but through many years of it flowing down from one team member to the next, it stays. So that's the reason I chose Shakespeare.
Okay, that's interesting. Another story then.
just sorry to on that, when I celebrated 19 years at Landor this year, on social media, my team put out something called Luluisms. So the phrases that I use that have become what the team
Okay.
uses, and there were some 4 pages of Luluisms. So just to back up why I said that.
So I haven't checked that out, and I'm sure that after the show, that's the first thing that I'm going to catch up. So, how would you explain your brand ideology to your youngest daughter?
I would say that my brand is all about carpe diem. Carpe diem is a Latin word, Riva. Riva is my youngest daughter, which means seize the day. So I truly believe how you live your day is how you live your life. And so if there's anything you want to accomplish in your life, make sure that you dedicate some part of your day to it. And I'm always about being in the moment, not being too focused on the past or being too worried about the future, but really enjoying playing every day, and play in the sense of really giving your best and maximizing the moment, working hard, but also playing hard, having fun, and really relishing the moment. So, Carpe Diem would be my philosophy.
In fact, that philosophy, or reminds me of one of my favorite movies where it's been used. And our last one, a book which is must read for anyone who wants to create a career in branding and communication.
Personally, I really love Todd Henry's The Accidental Creative. It's not a book on branding per se, but it's a book for creatives. And it's how creatives, whether you're a strategist or a designer or someone in the business of branding and design, should go about their day. How do they think about their routine? How do they constantly fill their mind with stimulus? What kind of nutrition and exercise should they do to really be creative at a moment's notice? So, Todd Henry is one of my favorite authors in the field of business and branding and design and creativity. And it's one of the most brilliant books. It's a book that had a hugely transformative impact on how I think about creativity. And more importantly, it really shook me up and made me realize that creativity is not random. There is a method to being super creative. And so if you want to learn that method, read any of Todd Henry's book, but start with The Accidental Creative.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lulu, for doing this. I think we could just go on and on talking to you. It's so exciting to hear your perspective on the world of branding and marketing. Thank you so much for joining us on Avantika Designeering series, and we look forward to exploring more opportunities to spending more time with you, picking up your brains, learning about the world of branding and marketing. Thank you so much for joining us.
Most welcome, Rohit. It was my pleasure. And I really hope that your students and young designers and other listeners enjoy the show. I'm always accessible on LinkedIn or Instagram as Lulu.Raghavan. And I look forward to continuing the conversation with some of them on those channels. Thank you again.
Thank you, Lulu.
Hey there, we hope you enjoyed our show. Do write to us on ads@avantika.edu.in. We look forward to your opinions, feedbacks, and suggestions of speakers you would like us to host on this show. Do tune in our channel next week on Wednesday for a new story on Hubhopper or wherever you get your podcast from. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter.